Well, this is a design for revegetating the entrance to a primary school, and the area to be landscaped is about 86 metres long and maybe a metre and a half, 2 metres deep. And what we would like to do, after talking to the teachers at the school, they'd like to involve students in implementing the plan, and to do that we need some sort of grid so we can place the species correctly. And to do that, I can go to Tools and Grid Line, insert grid lines, and up pops a little box of various options. So we'll set up a 5 metre grid, 5 metres in both directions. We could maybe make that 2.5, so it's going to be 2.5 in the Y and 5 metres in the X. I'm hesitating because I think keep it for involving students, let's keep it by a 5 by 5 metre grid, and in it comes, I'll pop it up here first and we will finish. So we can label this cell in here becomes cell A1. We might want to copy that piece of text and put it over here. So we can now do an exercise in grid map reading for students. Let's group them together as a block. We'll call it grid, and we want to place it accurately. We're going to need to place it down on that top corner. So for a pick point, we want the intersection of those 2 points there, and there we are, and we'll say OK. So we now have a block which, as its insertion point, is the point we want, and now we can move that block from its base point and we can sit it on the end of that one. So there's our grid now overlaying our design. Now all of this is the upper area of trees and shrubs. We could do the same, use the same grid for the ground cover, and because the grid is a block, I can just simply copy it from its base point at the top left, the intersection of the footpath and what will be planted, and then just move it down. So the grid is now sitting nicely. And for student exercises, we can now nominate 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 quadrants for individual students to plant their species out. So that's cell A1, over here is cell C1, and they can begin to learn a little about spreadsheets and relating quadrants. So we use the same sort of arrangement when you are doing assessments of native vegetation. You set up quadrants just like this. Such a useful concept for students to get. So here's the individual symbol there. It's given a block name EUMI. It's the same information that's in the contents there. So students should be able to identify what goes where. I've put a little cross in the middle of each one to assist with location. If we go to Format and Point Styles, I've set the size of that point at 0.5. If you're going to print this out for student use, you might want to change that to 1.5, and now the marker stands out just a little bit more. Well, let's now swing to a layout where we are presenting all of this, and you can see when we go to the layout, the large point size marker gets in the way. So let's change that. Go back to Point Styles and we'll just make 0.5 our point style. So there we are. We have the trees and shrubs through here, and the ground cover and grasses in the lower zone. Just to illustrate, if we look at the layers, I've turned off the dimension layer. We could well lock it so nothing can happen there. I've turned off the ground cover layer and the trees and shrubs layer, and so all we're left with is the plant construction layer, and that's where the circle shows. Of course we need the auto label horizontal layer on. Again, you could possibly lock that for safety reasons and we'll OK it. So there's one single floating viewport, and then down at the base of the design we've put the plant schedule. You might want to increase the size of that or slightly increase the size of the floating viewport. Either would get your text to a reasonable height. I've covered up the information on the site location, and I've put some images in here of species that are part of the design. So you might want to, at this stage, you might want to use the text tool. We'll just go format text styles and see what is current. Current is a standard. We could say we're going to make Arial narrow our current style and go into draw text, single line text, and I'll put caps lock on. And the yellow flowered species through here is Poltonea daphnoides, so we can pop it in and give it a rotation. It's a good idea here to think about the final print height. If we print this 1:1, I'll have to check, but I think this is an A2 sheet, and its height's 2.76, so let's make that 2.5. We try wherever possible to match the drafting standard of the country, in this case it's Australia, and we try and keep to the drafting standard where we use text of final text height of 2.5, 3, 3.5, 5 and 7. But I digress. Now it's time to print this and just have a little look at how it's going to appear. Remember we have two ways of printing. One, print to a PDF using a PDF writer, and another save as PDF option here. So we'll go File and choose Save as PDF. We'll pick Window. It's a good idea not to go for maximum level here because you're managing to turn a gCADPlus drawing, which is quite detailed, into an image file, and gCADPlus, the plugin that does that, might well fail. So we just want to get an idea of what it's going to look like before we do a print. And we'll call this, put it on the desktop. And we'll call it test PDF. And we'll save it. Takes a little time to generate, and up it comes. And you can see it's a little faint. That's because I've used fine line work. But if we go to use plus and just scroll down a little, you can see the image files are being produced really well. So there's a good chance, I think, that if we now print with a high resolution PDF writer, we'll get a very good result. Well, let's print the drawing using a PDF writer. So it's print. We'll use Qt PDF. I'm going to pick change here, and we're going to set the paper size to ISO A2. It's in landscape mode, and we'll put properties and go to advanced, and we'll just challenge gCADPlus a little and ask for 1200 dots per inch, which is very high resolution, and we'll OK that. So it's going to an A2 sheet landscape, and we'll OK that. Notice even though we've said fit it to paper, we've chosen the print area as paper. The scale is 1 to 1/0002, so it's essentially 1 to 1. and we're going to center the print. So OK, and away the printer goes. And this will take a little time.